to be honest with you, I don't see the Golden State Warriors bringing home another championship.
But we need to talk about the Golden State Warriors.
They switch and Curry got it off, and he misfires. It's over.
They were horrible. It was one of the worst performances, one of the most lethargic performances I've ever seen from the Golden State Warriors in all my years.
Here's why they're a dynasty.
Here's Curry for the record. It's good!
Not just because of the 4 titles in 8 years.
Over gets it by Jared Allen.
But because they are the essence of what you want your basketball team to be.
Side to Wiggins. Goes by
A year ago, around this time, the Warriors climbed back to the top of the NBA world by finishing with one of the top seeds in the NBA's Western Conference and had every expectation of making another title run. And speaking of title run, it wasn't a title run actually. They won it all, just when nobody thought the Warriors would do much of anything for a long time after they were the worst team in the NBA just 2 seasons earlier.
But to be honest with you, I don't see the Golden State Warriors bringing home another championship.
And well, they look like those same Warriors we saw before the plethora of injuries and a couple of down years. And when most people wrote the Warriors off to contend for a championship in the Steph Curry era, fast forward a year later, the Warriors have, again, stunned us all, but not in the least bit we expected. Just less than 1 year removed from a championship, the Warriors are far from looking and feeling like a legitimate championship contender. But that's the silver lining to all this. They don't look like it now, but not a single person I've talked to or heard from has yet to dismiss the Warriors season is over. The Dubs recently routed the lowly Portland Trailblazers by setting an NBA record for the most points in a single quarter, 55 points. Craziest part is, this is without Andrew Wiggins. Yes, he has been out of the lineup for 2 months, but he's well rested, got fresh legs, and I just know he's out for blood, especially with people on the internet creating false news about his absence. This all serves as a reminder of just what this team can do when it's firing on all cylinders and everyone is healthy. And then when I watch the Warriors without Steph Curry stand face to face with the team that has suddenly become their arch nemesis and run them out of the gym a bit earlier in the season, it told me one thing: 8th seed or the 1st seed, heck, mustard seed, pumpkin seed, or any other seed. No team wants to meet the Warriors in the playoffs, at least not when they're doing this.
Draymond Green hits a 3. Back to work. Thompson could he get it? Second effort is good for Golden State. DiVincenzo got it again. Looney would bring on a shot clock pool. Drills. Green coming the other way. DiVincenzo gets a clean look. 3-pointers good.
During an entire 4-year stretch from December 31st, 2018 to December 31st, 2022, the Warriors were 29-71 in games played without Stephen Curry. And of the 100 games they played, including their 29 wins without the former unanimous MVP, this one might have been the best game the Warriors ever played. I'm talking about against the 2nd seed in the Western Conference with their best player and one of the leading candidates for MVP playing one of his best games of the entire season. Ja Morant was spectacular throughout much of that game, and the Warriors still won by double digits. The Warriors were without Steph Curry and won by double digits. The Warriors' leading scorer, Jordan Poole, was ejected in the 4th quarter, and the Warriors still won by double digits. And it wasn't just that. The Warriors played with as much heart and conviction as they had all season. Taunting, flexing, trash talking, chest beating, screaming, A-list swagger. This reminds me a lot about the Warriors from 4 years ago. The 2018-19 Warriors and the 22-23 Warriors don't look nor feel the same in the least bit. But if you look between the lines, there are some similarities. Both these teams were defending champions and came into the season with championship or bust expectations. And though the Warriors from 4 years ago weren't even nearly identical to the current day Warriors, from a win-loss record standpoint, those Warriors didn't meet their expectations because of fatigue and what I like to call the redundancy syndrome. Not taking the regular season too seriously and just waiting for the playoffs to start because we're just too cool for school. Seriously. And that's something we're seeing from the Warriors today. Complacency, fatigue, boredom, you name it. But when it's time to get up and play for something, or when they're on a big stage, we've seen it. They'll come out and punch their opponents in the mouth. The Warriors were motivated to play the Grizzlies on Christmas Day because of their brewing rivalry, and especially after Dillon Brooks was on something serious when he said he called the Grizzlies a dynasty for crying out loud.
We all had the vision and he didn't, which is perfect. Send him back to the Warriors and let him keep building this dynasty.
Okay, I won't even comment on that right now.
Man, they was talking about dynasty and all that. You can't talk dynasty when you haven't won before.
The Grizzlies brought out the best in the Warriors, and we saw how lethal the Warriors still can be. When the Warriors played the Boston Celtics in a rematch of last season's NBA Finals in December, we saw, again, the best come out of the Warriors. It's something that eventually becomes commonplace with every consistently winning team. I brought up the Warriors from 4 years ago. They were the same. They would lose some games they had no business losing. But when it came time to get serious and play ball, no one could see them. Just ask James Harden, Chris Paul, and Damian Lillard what a fully motivated Warriors team is really like trying to defend, especially come playoff time. And that's exactly the formula I see brewing with the Warriors in 2023. They won last year's NBA championship. They've won 4 titles in 7 years. Steph, Clay, and Draymond have seemingly played a lifetime with each other by their side. Fatigue is expected, and some nonchalance in the regular season isn't something Warriors fans should be all that concerned about. Sure, the Warriors mightily underperformed to start the season, and even continued that trend moving towards midseason. And sure, the Warriors still have a pretty abysmal road record, and have by far the worst road record by any defending champion in NBA history. But it's trial and error time for the Warriors. The Dubs have several rising stars working to find their niche on the team, and give the Warriors that added dimension of firepower. When you've got 4 guys making nearly max dollars, it can become tricky for a franchise to promptly configure just how to make the most out of all that talent. This brings me back to the top. Steph and Clay, the engine that makes this dynasty go, and ultimately the origin of this dynasty. Before Steph Curry went down against the Pacers in early December, he had the Warriors back on the rise and marching in the right direction. Some of it can be chalked up to players on the roster finally figuring out their roles, but a whole lot of it can be attributed to the magical heroics of Steph Curry, who just recently turned 35 years old. Man, 14 years in the NBA, and he's never looked better. Steph Curry's historic start to the season has triggered comparisons between this Steph Curry and the Steph Curry that won the unanimous MVP back in 2016. It's a super cliche, I know, but it's the truth. Men and women lie, but numbers don't. Steph Curry's pre-injury earlier this season was an absolute monster, and had he escaped injury this season, it might have been a different story for the Warriors. Just look at what he was doing. 30 points per game, nearly 7 rebounds and assists per game, a true shooting percentage of nearly 67%, and a PER of 26.5. In 2016, when Steph led the Warriors to 73 wins, Steph's numbers looked like this: 30.1 points, nearly 7 rebounds, 5 rebounds, a true shooting percentage of 66.9%, and a PER of 31.5. Incredibly similar numbers, nearly 8 years apart. And in good news for the Warriors, if Steph keeps up his average of at least 30 points per game, the Warriors have a good chance of winning a lot of games. In games in which Steph Curry scores at least 30 or more points, the Warriors are 127-38 in 8 years between the end of December 2015 and the end of December 2022. So, what does all this tell us? If Steph is Steph, and the Warriors are playing fully motivated and up for the task, I like the Warriors against any team in the Western Conference. And given their championship pedigree and the backbone of a dynasty this team still very much possesses, you'd be silly to count out the Warriors and dismiss them as old news, or not what they once were. There's one big elephant in the room, and it's something even Coach Steve Kerr has readily acknowledged this season. It's the fact that all things considered, all good things must come to an end, but maybe not before another finals appearance, or dare I say, another NBA championship? Well, sitting at the 6th seed in the West right now, the odds are stacked against them, because the last time a team won a championship as the 5th seed or lower, when Hakeem Olajuwon took the unsung Houston Rockets past the finish line. The Warriors have a lot working for them: experience, championship DNA, Steph Curry and Klay Thompson's postseason heroics, Steve Kerr's championship DNA, and a deep roster top to bottom. While it might be wishful thinking to consider the Warriors as a legitimate championship threat, I've come to learn one thing: you never doubt those guys up in the Bay.